June 17th, 2020. All right, so I have been gone for a while, really just focusing on Holden and my family and myself. And it was time for me to put myself first for a while, so I've been putting a little more time into physical fitness, exercise. Of course, nutrition is always a priority. Anyway, what are we going to talk about today? As you know, or hopefully you know, the federal lawsuit against the EPA specific to fluoridated water and its neurotoxicity has been going on for about a week and a half. It started, June 8th. Went on all last week and half of this week, and it was supposed to conclude today, but it's not over yet. So what's gone on? Well, a lot. And Michael Connett, the attorney working with the Fluoride Action or fluoridealert.org, in fact, let me just go over there, spent a lot of time with expert witnesses presenting a lot of the new science that has come out over the recent years specific to neurotoxicity from systemic ingestion of fluoride from public water, fluoridated water, which we are one of few countries that actually do this horrible practice. And they presented a lot of compelling and very important data showing that especially pregnant mothers and the babies and then postnatal infants that are especially formula fed, right, where the formula is constituted with fluoridated tap water, or even when you go buy that stupid fluoridated water in the baby section, that this is causing neurological damage, brain damage. And of course, the EPA, they couldn't present benefits of fluoride specific to oral hygiene, tooth benefits, or anything like that. So this is specifically about neurotoxicity. And they could only talk to that point. And their expert witnesses were ridiculous. In fact, they weren't even fluoride experts. They were just scientists that have reviewed the data.
What is a wish?
And what is going on here?
It's adventure.
I guess we'll shut that down. Okay. So anyway, they're basically just hired white coats to defend industry, whether it's fluoridation from the EPA, glyphosate with Monsanto, or many other toxic uses of chemicals in our daily lives. All of these expert witnesses on behalf of the EPA, their entire track records are defending these toxins. Never the opposite, never looking at the risk, always defending. So obviously, they know their place in society or their job, and they get paid very well to do these defending of these toxic things. So anyway, really interesting. I tried every now and then to pop in to the hearing via Zoom. It was public, and you could join online through a Zoom link. And I got to hear several different things that I just thought were ridiculous. So early, last week, as they were presenting studies, they were talking about, there were two main studies that talk about how fluoride exposure in pregnancy and then through infant formula, and there's no way to control dose, right, because it's everywhere, and showing neurological damage and the IQ drop. And the two main studies that are the best well-done studies, one was done in Mexico and one was done in Canada. And it was so dumb. The EPA attorneys are going, well, why'd you go to Mexico to do this? Why not do it here in America? This is where it was easy to pull this data and focus on these populations, and then this other study in Canada, and they're literally saying oh, well, sure, it might have had these results in Mexico and in Canada, but you can't generalize that across the American population because somehow American human beings are completely different than Mexican human beings or Canadian human beings. What? It was the dumbest argument. And again, in today's closing statements, the EPA used the exact same argument. They came back, there was multiple studies discussed. Animal studies, human studies, but the best human data had to do with this particular study in Mexico, which I think was this one, and the one in Canada. Yeah. And as they were interviewing these scientists, it was really interesting to hear how they tried to say that this data wasn't valid and you can't generalize it. So there's a great article by Derek Burrows that was published on the Last American Vagabond website that you could go read called #Fluoride Trial. Scientist says he was threatened because of a fluoride study that he did. This is all from the first week. And this is worth reading. So the first week of a historic water fluoridation trial wrapped up on Friday afternoon after 4 days of occasionally tense testimony from expert witnesses with the Fluoride Action Network and the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. One expert witness claimed that he had been coerced into signing a statement downplaying his study, which claimed fluoride is a neurotoxicant. Another witness confirmed that at least one type of fluoride is a pesticide being added to the water supply. And I go over all of this in my fluoride video if you want to learn more about that. Attorneys with the Fluoride Action Network argue that water fluoridation violates the 1970 Toxic Substances Control Act provisions, which prohibit the particular use of a chemical which has been found to present an unreasonable risk to the general public. Under Section 21 of the TSCA, citizens are allowed to petition the EPA to regulate or ban individual chemicals. So these are the grounds that were used to get this trial into federal court. It took 20 years to get this done. And luckily, scientists continue to do research, and we've had these great studies come out. The EPA is represented by lawyers from the Department of Justice who are presenting experts from the corporate firm Exponent Inc. That's really important to follow who's representing the EPA. The government is defending water fluoridation and seeking a dismissal of the petition by the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs in the case include Fluoride Action Network, Moms Against Fluoridation, Food and Water Watch, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology, and the Organic Consumers Association. So a lot of people came together to get this lawsuit moving forward. Michael Connett with the Fluoride Action Network called 3 witnesses throughout the week, including Howard Hugh, MD, Bruce Lamphere, MD, Philippe Grandjean, MD, and Kathleen Thiessen. Connett told the court that the EPA has previously relied on the research of all these experts in the past on other toxicants like lead and mercury. 2 of these experts have been authors of key fluoride studies funded by U.S. government agencies. Connett noted that the EPA chose to use experts from Exponent rather than their own agency experts. Interesting. The EPA did their part to question the Fluoride Action Network's witnesses and diminish their credibility, and they sure tried. Dr. Thiessen made a powerful admission when interviewed by Fluoride Action Network attorney Connett, stating that sodium fluoride is a pesticide that is being added to the water supply. However, during cross-examination of Thiessen, the EPA asked if she is personal friends with the Connett family, including Paul Connett, director of the Fluoride Action Network, and Michael Connett, the lawyer representing them. Thiessen said yes, she is friends with the family. It is this fluoride issue that has brought them together over the years to fight against it, and they have become friends. The EPA pressed further, asking if she had attended meetings sponsored by the Fluoride Action Network, whether she is on the group's mailing list, if she has appeared in interviews on the websites, and if she has helped Paul Connett with his book, The Case Against Fluoride. And of course she has. She has done research on this, she saw the risk, and she spoke about it. She's open about it. And so somehow, because she's a scientist speaking out against it, that makes her not a credible witness to speak out against it. Makes no sense. So anyway, they talk about their friendships and how they work together. And then she says, when questioned whether or not she has been advocating for removing fluoride for decades while maintaining a friendship with the plaintiffs, she said yes, but emphasized that her position was based on science. That was what brought them together. The EPA then showed the court emails between the plaintiffs, and Connett sent Thiessen a list of studies to review in those emails and saying, take a look at this and let me know your opinions. Okay. Dr. Howard Hugh provided further background on his research on fluoride, testifying on the difficulty of getting his research funded by the National Health Institute and the steps for publication in the Environmental Health Perspectives Journal. Hugh stated that his study found a loss of around 3 to 4 IQ points, and this impact on population should not be ignored. And when you're looking at statistically significant information on that bell curve, 3 to 4 IQ points actually on that curve is a huge, huge deal. We're talking about millions and millions of kids affected with this brain damage. He also discussed the parallels to lead neurotoxicity. And then in this article, they go on to talk about some of the corruption of the fluoride science. One of the strongest witnesses for the plaintiffs was the Danish environmental epidemiologist Dr. Philip Grangen, known for his work on the neurotoxicity of mercury. Grangen helped the EPA establish safe regulatory levels for mercury in the diet. Dr. Grangen stated that he had been threatened or coerced by a colleague at the Harvard Dental School after one of his studies concluded that fluoride was a neurotoxin. This is a huge revelation that he got to admit under oath. And I'll show you what he's talking about. Okay, so he was threatened when his study concluded that fluoride was a neurotoxin. When the Department of Justice lawyer Deborah Carfora asked Grangen about a statement he signed downplaying the significance of the results, Grangen stated that the Harvard Press Department put the statement together and added his name to it. How ethical is that? The statement said that the researchers still agreed with the CDC position that water fluoridation is safe. Dr. Grangen did not elaborate upon who threatened him or how often such threats may happen in this field. He also stated that the fluoride lobby infiltrated a World Health Organization committee seeking to exclude any mention of harmful effects of fluoride. What are they trying to hide? On the specific harmful effects of fluoride, Dr. Grangen stated in his deposition that the weight of the epidemiological evidence leaves no reasonable doubt that developmental neurotoxicity is a serious human health risk associated with elevated fluoride exposure. Dr. Grangen has also stated that efforts to control human fluoride exposure need to focus on pregnant women and small children. During his testimony, Grangen took particular issue with statements made by the EPA's expert, Dr. Chang. Again, one of these hired coats to defend toxins. What she has written should not be relied upon. This is not science. This is simply a misleading report, Grangen elaborated, stating, I'm embarrassed that the EPA would recruit Dr. Chang, who has already tried to kill some of my work on polyfluorinated chemicals, and that they would recruit her to write this report full of biases. I get a little upset about it. I'm sorry to see what has happened to colleagues that work for a product defense firm. That's all they are. They are a product defense firm. The issue of the EPA's experts working on exponent was the theme of several of the plaintiff's witnesses. At least two of the EPA's witnesses, Ellen Chang and Joyce Seju, are employed by exponent, a firm accused of paying the U.S. government to defend dangerous chemicals, which they are. Plaintiff's witness Dr. Lampfer also called out the scientists working for Exponent as industry-friendly rent-a-white coats. It was obvious. I got to watch some of the questioning of Dr. Chang. I watched most actually of Dr. Joyce Seju and a little bit of Chang, and it was obvious. The apparent conflicts of interest were the topic of conversation again on Friday when Fluoride Action Network attorney Michael Conant cross-examined the government's witness, Dr. Joyce Seju, a board-certified toxicologist and fellow at the Academy of Toxicological Sciences, who specialize in risk assessment of chemical exposures. Conant asked Seju if she has been funded by mining and smelting companies which release arsenic into the air. Conant also asked Seju if the majority of her projects have been funded by industry. And yes, Suji agreed that most of her work has come from industry-funded sources. I think it was Chang. They asked, well, how much do you get paid to do this, to come and defend one of these products? And it was something like $150,000 or $149,000. It was unreal. So yeah, that's all she's ever done is defend these companies. Never prosecute. Never as the plaintiff, only defendant. So anyway, to wrap up what happened today at the end of the trial, we know that for 75 years, around 200 million people in this country are being poisoned every day by fluoridated water. This is a medical intervention that's mandated on you and you have no choice. Okay? For 75 years, people have been poisoned by fluoride in the water. And instead of recognizing the danger and saying we need to put a stop to this now, even if we need to continue to do research because we do see a hazard or a risk, they say, well, some new evidence has just come out. Some new studies have been released and we need to look at them. So we're going to delay this. We're going to put it off. You have 60 days, 45 or 60 days to look at this new data and come back and we'll talk more. So what's another 60 days of poisoning more babies and women and everybody, right? So here we go. The plaintiffs, the EPA, are to return for an update in August. Parties considering new petition and other avenues. Health advocates' concerns about fluoride in drinking water will have to wait a little bit longer as the EPA and the federal judge in California considers new data about the chemical's health risks. U.S. District Court Judge Edward M. Change in the Northern District of California postponed further proceedings on Wednesday at the end of a 2-week trial over advocates' concerns that fluoride is a neurotoxin and that the Environmental Protection Agency should stop the decades-long practice of adding it to the drinking water, almost a century long. The advocacy groups, which include Food and Water Watch, the Fluoride Action Network, and Moms Against Fluoridation, petitioned the EPA to regulate the chemical in 2016. After the agency denied the position, they sued in 2017. Since then, new data has been published about fluoride's health effects, and the National Academies of Science expect to publish another study later this year. Judge Chen suggests the plaintiffs file a new petition or the agency reconsider the 2016 petition. Both parties took issue with that approach and have yet to decide what action they will ultimately take. The path forward. Defending their existing petition and bringing witnesses to trial has been a massive undertaking, said Michael Conant, a Waters, Krause, and Paul attorney representing the plaintiffs. Starting a new petition could take more resources and time than the advocates have. We would rather see the EPA do something now. Let's get some action done now to help begin trying to protect the public. But no. On the other hand, the EPA doesn't have a mechanism under the Toxic Substances Control Act to review a petition it's already denied. What an excuse. Even if a new petition was submitted, there's no way the EPA could conduct a thorough review within the 90 days it has to review new petitions, said Deborah Carfora, who represents the agency during closing arguments. The advocate's petition would need to meet the same rigor and standards that the EPA follows for its own reviews, she said, which the agency uses to decide whether to set regulations for a chemical. We welcome the public's health in helping EPA evaluate these chemicals, but there's specific guidance and interested persons should follow the guidance. The 90-day deadline is a tough one for the agency to meet. Anyway, it's been postponed. They got to look at more data. It was very clear. You guys should go look at my fluoride video, go look at the new studies about the impact of fluoride on neurological development in children. That's this study, Developmental Fluoride Neurotoxicity, a Systemic Review and Meta-Analysis from October of 2012. And this study, Association between Maternal Fluoride Exposure During Pregnancy and IQ Scores in Offspring in Canada. So let's just look at the results of these studies. Conclusions, results from the 2012 study. The standardized weighted mean difference in IQ score between exposed and reference populations was negative 0.45, 95% confidence interval, using a random effects model. Thus, children in high fluoride areas had significantly lower IQ scores than those who lived in a lower fluoride area. Subgroup and sensitivity analysis also indicated inverse associations, although the substantial heterogeneity did not appear to decrease. The results support the possibility of an adverse effect of high fluoride exposure on children's neurodevelopment. Future research should include detailed individual level information on prenatal exposure, neurobehavioral performance, and covariates for adjustment. In the Canada study, we can go through all the numbers. Bottom line, children had IQ scores range, girls showing significantly higher mean scores than boys. So boys are affected much higher. And there was actually an association of black boys being associated or harmed by fluoride more. Differential association between boys and girls. A 1 milligram per liter increase in fluoride was associated with a 4.49 point lower IQ score in boys. It's almost 5 IQ points lost. But there was no statistically significant association with IQ in girls. And this is the prenatal, I think. And then postnatal, a 1 milligram per liter higher daily intake of fluoride among pregnant women. Oh no, the other way around. Go read it. It was associated with a 3.66 lower IQ score in boys and girls. So in the conclusion, in this study, maternal exposure to higher levels of fluoride during pregnancy was associated with a lower IQ scores in children aged 3 to 4. These findings indicate the possible need to reduce fluoride intake during pregnancy. In that original study back in 2012, Granjon says this quote, "Fluoride seems to fit in with lead, mercury, and other poisons that cause chemical brain damage. The effect of each toxicant may seem small, but the combined damage on a population scale can be serious, especially the brain power of the next generation is crucial to all of us." And this was the statement that they threatened him about and then added their own statement saying, well, we take it back. We still stand by fluoridation. And you can go into this Harvard paper, Impact of Fluoride on Neurological Development in Children, and then hyperlink over to the statement where they basically say, yeah, I did say this, but we're going to stand by fluoridation. And luckily, under oath, he's able to say, I was threatened and I did not state that. Important information. All right, guys, bottom line, Again, early in the trial, they try to say, oh, well, yeah, there was high risk in Mexico and high risk in Canada, but you can't generalize risk across the entire American population. There are so many co-founders with economical factors and socio factors and all these different things. Well, every one of those factors you're talking about exists at some point in America populations. We have poor and well off and a variety of different races and all these different things. It's all the same. We're all human beings and we all have different exposure. So if you read between the lines, what they're saying is, oh, you can't generalize risk when it's threatening our business and profits, but we can generalize safety where there's a lack of data to protect our profits and our industry. That is corruption. And that is what's being exposed in these trials, if you're paying attention. And I hope you are. So continue to watch this. We're coming back in August for this to continue. And hopefully this will be the boulder that continues to roll to the end goal of getting fluoride removed from the public water systems in America. All right. That's it. That's all I want to talk about today. Love you guys.